4 decades.
Tune in Saturdays from 3 to 5 p.m. for Miss Sarah's Dynamic Gospel Power Show. That's 2 hours of great gospel music every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m., all brought to you by the Ozona Pig Restaurant in Ozona. Yes, that's every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. It's Miss Sarah's Dynamic Gospel Power Show. Tune in on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Show me the money.
It's the Employment Opportunity Hour with Gene Hodge every Thursday night from 7 until 8.
So the purpose of the show is to help you out there to find something that you enjoy doing instead of a job. And at the start of the show, I normally give out a formula, which I know will guarantee you to find the type of job that you want right now.
Find out the formula to an enjoyable job with Gene Hodge's Employment Opportunity Hour every Thursday night from 7 until 8 here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Show me the money.
Hey, you new to the area or just want to know about the best hidden gems and upcoming events? Stay tuned. Be Local Buzz with Devin takes you to these places, introduces you to the best businesses, and tells you about upcoming buzz. Preset your radio to Tan Talk 1340 AM or 106.1 FM every Thursday from 4 to 5. That is the Be Local Buzz with Devin on Tan Talk 1340 AM and 106 FM every Thursday from 4 to 5. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Join the Tampa St. Pete Sports Connection live from Ferg Sports Bar and Grill every Saturday from noon to 2 as we cover Tampa Bay sports, from the Pee-wees to the preps to the pros, providing a positive perspective in our weekly interviews with NFL alumni and Florida Sports Hall of Fame inductees, as well as collegiate, high school, youth coaches and players, conversations from the clubhouse, as well as entertaining guests weekly. So be sure to have a championship day with the Tampa St. Pete Sports Connection Saturdays from 12 to 2 on the Tan Talk family of stations.
Hi, this is Paul Malloy, host of Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show. I hope you'll join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, where we strive to bring you the libertarian perspective on political events of the day. There's no show quite like Freedom Works, with in-depth interviews, our ultimate top 10 list, and so much more. So join us for Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Tampa Bay's Tan Talk, entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
How many days, how many weeks, how many years gone by? How many lies, how many times will we realize? What will it take to stand up and say, enough is enough, enough is enough? Enough is
Sick and tired going back and forth the back with the sycophants telling me relax, go put on a mask.
Wow, Jara, was that you singing?
Yes, myself singing and Topher rapping. That was off of his album in actually February called 222, which went to number 1 on the iTunes charts.
Oh.
Go Freedom.
Yes, exactly. Go Freedom. It's so important that we have good messages out there on songs. We were just talking about that.
Absolutely. Well, first, before we continue that, I want to introduce ourselves.
Yes.
We are, this is our show, Voices for Change. I'm Jara.
Miriam.
And our show is based in human rights because we have found that to be an incredible platform in which people can share what they need to share, talk about issues of the day, but do it in a way that is not divisive because we actually all share our basic 30 human rights agreed upon by the United Nations on the 10th of December in 1948.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And it is so very important to go over these rights again and again because they unify us. And it's extremely important that we have something to unify us when, unfortunately, there's a lot of polarity out there.
That's right. And it's absolutely, it's non-political. It has nothing to do with race or religion or demographic status or anything like that, monetary status. It is actually just something, like I said, that is universal. And you guys should definitely know what they are so that you can keep them protected. And you can always go to theun.org to look those up. But of course, they cover actually freedom of speech, no torture, the right to your own privacy, the right to all kinds of things. And
if you're a parent, you have the right to choose your children's medical treatment.
That's right. In fact, let's see, which one is that here? Article 26. Oh, and education. Article 26, Part 3 is parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. Did you guys know that?
Yeah, I know. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's, what's really great about that is that despite what people believe politically right now, and obviously there's even people that are pro the Constitution of the United States, or some people that are anti that. But the truth is that this is much more broad than that. It's a huge, broad spectrum all across the world. And like we said, has nothing to do with politics or where you're from. It's your basic human rights.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's very important to go over that. And, I am a human rights advocate in the field of mental health. And so I personally just absolutely love going over those, because unfortunately still today, when somebody is taken by a police by force to a mental hospital, all their human rights are stripped away. And we need a lot of reform in the area of mental health. And so I love the fact that we're focusing on human rights as society's universal declaration that brings us all together, so we can look at all the different issues that exist and, correct them.
Absolutely. And what you just said, by the way, actually covers 2 articles in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 5, which is no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. And also Article 9, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile.
Yes.
And sometimes these can be a bit arbitrary, just depending on what someone actually views as a mental disorder versus someone maybe just being upset momentarily.
Right. Exactly. There's unfortunately a lot of confusion in that area, and people really need help. That's what they need.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to have a campaign that says hugs, not drugs.
Oh, I like that. Oh, y'all heard it here first.
Hugs, not drugs.
You better trademark that real quick, Miriam.
Oh my gosh, but we have an amazing person that's going to be on tonight. I mean, I wish I could say bad ASS, but I won't. She is a complete powerhouse.
Yep.
Lee Dundas is going to be on the show tonight, and we are so blessed that she is going to be doing an interview with us, because talk about a human rights advocate.
Legend.
Yeah.
Legend. When I heard that you had committed her to this interview, I was like, oh my gosh, the Lee Dundas, are you serious?
Yeah.
So that's going to be amazing. We'll be introducing her shortly and just kind of giving you a lowdown of what Miriam and I are about. Obviously, she is involved with many activities of her own. I am primarily a performing artist, a singer, songwriter, and actress. And also there's a lot of work to be done in the field of the arts, guys.
Yes, definitely. I mean, tell us just a little bit about what you were hearing from freedom advocates that have been talking recently about the culture, right? Because we need positive messages coming from artists. And luckily, we have some of your songs on the air here, and they're beautiful messages, Jara. So hopefully we can hear more beautiful messages from more artists.
Yeah, definitely. The phrase that I've been hearing quite often is that politics is downstream to culture. Meaning that if you really look at the cultural push that is going on, it is led by artists. And also there are huge numbers of the population and demographics that will listen to an artist, their favorite actress or actor or musician, or even sports heroes, way before they will listen to a politician, a doctor, anyone in legal counsel, or anyone on the news. So the truth is that I truly have great reason to believe, and have seen with my own eyes in the last 2 years, especially, and before that, but it's become very prevalent in the last couple of years that, the mainstream entertainment industry is definitely using the artists to push certain messages. And when those artists do not wish to push those messages, they are, the famous word, canceled. They lose their contracts. They get ripped off the airwaves. And that leads me to definitely see that there is influence there, and that the other side, and I'm not saying even if that's a political side, I'm just saying the side of good versus evil in a way.
There you go. I think it's very easy to say good versus evil.
Good versus evil. I don't care the color, the politics, the religion involved, anything like that. I just look at what are the messages being delivered,
yeah,
and how much is being funded for mainstream media to put out these messages that are degrading in ways that the music is degrading. You know, some of the shows have degrading content in them where the money could be spent actually on upholding family values, upholding and showing that people are happy and are mentally well.
Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, but and when you really start looking, because boy, oh boy, have I done my research across media platforms, across shows. I at one point was researching every single artist on Top 40 Radio, and I was like, this is not a good scene. And when you know how much funding is behind them, many, many millions of dollars behind pushing that message forward, you really do see that there's more to it than meets the eye. So
yeah, definitely. And you know, there's a documentary out there called The Marketing of Madness. And I don't know if you can find that on the web. Our amazing engineer up there, Carmine, big shout out to Carmine and Bobby in the booth. Thank you so much. But Marketing of Madness goes over the massive amounts of money that is made on pharmaceutical medication or psych drugs or whatever word we want to call that. And so that money is filtered into lots of different venues or channels for agenda.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, in my own, and I'm not going to get too into this because I've just, begun my research, but I will say that at one point when I saw certain things happening on the charts, when I even saw stuff happening with my own music and the other freedom fighters that, when we came out with music in January and February, and we were watching what was happening on the charts, and it was a very interesting game, and certain things would suddenly rush forward out of nowhere. And I decided to take it upon myself to do a deep dive and investigate basically, are these different entities, music publishing companies, artists, Apple Music itself, what is the involvement or what is the connection? I was playing a game called 2 Degrees of Pfizer.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's a very good policy, I think, to always question what is the intention? What is the intention behind an individual, maybe, or a company, or an agenda, or the intention of the record label, for instance, that is, funding the artists that are recording the songs that are unfortunately spreading messages of degrading society.
Absolutely.
Things like that.
Yeah. And it's really incredible when you start actually just looking at it, and then it doesn't become an emotional debate. I like the phrase follow the money, because that usually works. And you can be really amazed by why are certain entities so involved in the entertainment industry? And I just say that also because obviously we're both human rights advocates, and Lee Dundas, who's coming on, is such a hero in that field. But, we do need to get the message out there more. And I do truly believe that when society is being so mentally, spiritually, emotionally pushed down by certain messages, the things that they're hearing constantly, that it's sneaking into their minds, into their souls. And I don't think that's done by mistake. So the thing that we can do
is push back.
And really, myself and all these other incredible artists are really creating music that's about freedom, that's about hope, that's about, beautiful values. So really, when you find artists like that, the best thing you can do is support them, buy their music, support them online. So that's the best thing you can do. And my name's Jierra, JIERRA.com. So you can always go find me there, JIERRA.com.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And, it's really wonderful that we have this, platform here with Chapters on Tan Talk to express our freedom of speech, right?
Absolutely. And just so people understand that right now we are actually on the radio network Tan Talk, and we're also blasting all the way through many different areas of Florida and New York in kind of a coordinated effort with a nonprofit group called Chapters Rap Organization. So between the two of them, we really have had an incredible platform, freedom of speech, like you said. I mean, I'm getting nailed left and right on social media. So my friend Miriam and obviously Steve Vaccaro, who started Chapters Rap, really improved my life greatly by allowing me and you, Miriam, to then take our voices to the airwaves.
Yes, and create voices for change.
Yeah, which is always a good message too, because I definitely believe that it can be really hard and there can be obstacles in your way. But if you really are fighting for the truth and fighting to do what's right in life and do more good than harm, you must always find a way. You cannot give up. When one door closes, not always another one opens. Sometimes you got to bust down the wall, is what I say.
Not right away, right?
Wait a second. The window shut, the door shut. And there have been times where I felt like I don't know how to get around all of this. I don't know if there's a way around or through. There is always a way through.
Yeah.
Always. You just have to find it.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think it's a really good message to reiterate because people need to hear that, right? I mean, like we all go through challenges in life. We all run into energy vampire personality, so to speak. We all wonder, how am I ever going to do this? And, you just can. You keep taking your walks, you keep taking your vitamins, you keep visiting a holistic doctor, and you make it.
Yeah. And also that's why it was so important, both for Miriam and I in this show, to week after week after week bring you stories of people that are fighting the good fight in all different areas of life, from musicians, doctors, mental health care practitioners, lobbyists, lawyers, just to show you that, and every single one of them has had obstacles that they had to overcome. Every single one of them had some definitive moment where they were like,
how am I going to make it?
Am I going to do this?
Yeah, right.
Am I going to lose everything? And on the brink, on the edge of almost losing everything, every single one of them made positive gains and positive decisions in their life. And it did work out for the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know it's extremely important to remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're having a bad day, you're having a bad time period in your life, and you think, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do this? Remember that you can. And your mind, your positive part of your mind and your positive postulates will lead you to that. So it's important to pick up a pen, a piece of paper, maybe write down your plan, and every day take a look at that and just remember what you're doing.
Yeah. And also I would say, if I could add 2 things, always be very aware of who is in your life influencing you, either in a positive or a negative way, because that can be very important. That maybe there are people or entities or an organization or someone at your work that is maybe driving you down a little bit. And that's very important. And the other thing is, keep your integrity in. There's always that little thing in your gut that knows, like, wait, should I, shouldn't I? If it's should I, shouldn't I, and you feel that, do what you know is right, because the other way never works out in a positive way. In my experience, is never, not one time.
Yeah, no, I know. It's very important to remember that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, Jared, do you want to introduce our guest, or would you like me to, please?
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's very exciting.
I'm so excited, Lee. I'm so excited. Yes. Okay. Well, here we go. Lee Dundas is a human rights attorney and abolitionist. And just so you guys know what that word is, it's like a modern day person that gets rid of different variations of slavery.
Yeah, so she's fighting modern day slavery.
That's right. Lee Dundas is a human rights attorney and abolitionist dedicated to preserving basic freedoms while also combating global injustices like child slavery and the peddling of medical tyranny disguised as progress. Lee's career actually spans 3 decades, and her focus changed to humanitarian work nearly a decade ago, when she joined an anti-slavery NGO, which is non-governmental organization, as far as I know. Yep. And she is in their general counsel. She actually has helped to amass evidence of money laundering by human traffickers. She's been appointed for 8 years, the Congressional Advisory Committee on Human Trafficking, where actually she's further assisted in identification of these problems and helped formulate U.S. response. So, and in 1920, Lee took these lessons that she learned and she took them to the streets of America, where she joined with others to defeat an even greater threat. What she says here in her bio, which I can second this, a second Holocaust designed to eradicate our very humanity and crush any who speak against it. So she literally fights out for medical freedom, against child trafficking, against the loss of our First Amendment and our freedom of speech. She travels all around the country to every large event I've ever seen. She speaks to the senators. She goes there. She is a lobbyist and actually Esquire. I forgot to mention that she is Lee Dundas Esquire.
Yeah, no, she is a fantastic woman. And you know what? We are going to be blessed with her in our local area pretty soon. And so she's going to tell us all about the event that she's going to be doing in this area.
Oh my gosh, I get to meet Lee Dundas in person. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to the legend, Lee Dundas Esquire.
Woo! Wow, Lee, it's so good to see you. I can't hear you though. Can you say that again?
Yes, go ahead and unmute your microphone.
There
Lee.
we go.
Hi,
Thanks
Lee.
for the reminder. I said it's such a pleasure to be here with you guys as well. Anybody who fights, against slavery and for freedom, medical freedom, regular good old-fashioned American freedom, you name it, is also a hero in my book. So I feel like we're among like-minded people, both here in the studio with you guys, and I'm sure with your viewing audience as well. And I'm just so happy I'm here today.
Thank you so much.
so much, Lee.
And I was just watching a video before I came on air of you and actually our good buddy who we had on the show, Dr. Peter McCullough, at speaking to a senator about medical freedom. So thank you for everything that you are doing.
Yes, yeah. Peter McCullough is a great guy. I got a resume that just won't quit, as I'm sure you and your viewers know. And he was instrumental, along with Attorney Tom Rentz, in getting some of the military whistleblower data from the higher-ranking colonels in the Army out about the vaccine and the numbers that we were seeing in terms of damage that was being created amongst our brave men and women who had, offered to die for this country, but I'm sure didn't expect that they were going to be harmed, injured, or die as a result of an experimental medical procedure that was being forced on them. So he, along with Tom, they were very instrumental in getting Senator Ron Johnson to do a sort of a closed door session on getting that data known, so that hopefully we can start making progress on that front.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that your career spans several decades here. Lee, I'm just very concerned because we all have our own stories in life that lead us down a certain path. What was it? What was the moment for you where you knew that this was going to be your life's adventure in fighting for freedom? What put you in that direction and on that path?
Wow. And here I was still trying to figure out what I was going to do when I grew up. I wanted to be a dolphin trainer or a concert pianist as a child, and music was actually my first major in college. I skipped high school. I went to college when I was 14, and then I realized that I liked to talk too much to be chained to an inanimate object, although piano playing is beautiful, for 14 hours a day, which is kind of what's required of you as a music major. So I got super fascinated in a sociology class and a poli-sci class in college. Learned about the Stanley Milgram experiment in 1987 in a political science class when the Berlin Wall was coming down. And it really piqued my interest in what causes masses of people to be blindly obedient to people in positions of authority. Stanley Milgram, of course, was a Yale University professor who tried to figure out if the obedience tendency within the human race had something to do with the Holocaust. And he decided to do a study designed to ferret the answer to that out. And he invited a whole bunch of people, just really quickly so your viewers know what the heck I'm talking about. He invited a whole bunch of people off the streets around Yale in to be part of what he built out as a memory experiment. They thought their memory capabilities were being studied, and it was all comers. It was students, it was retirees, it was accountants, it was machinists, blue collar, white collar, you name it, retired women, housewives, you name it. And they all came in and they were paired up in groups of 2, and they were given a list of arbitrary word pairings to memorize. So when I said camel, you were supposed to say lamp or whatever. And then we would be separated into 2 different rooms where we could hear each other, but we could not see each other. And I would say camel, and you were supposed to say the word lamp back to me. And when you got it wrong, I was supposed to hit a switch on the wall that would give you an electric shock, because you, as the learner in the experiment, had been wired with electrodes to give you a little shock. The interesting part, of course, is that for every successive wrong answer, I was supposed to flip a higher switch with a higher voltage of electricity that would be delivered to you. And it went from about 9 volts in the first, wrong answer instance up to 450 volts at the
Wow.
Which, Miriam, you probably have some background in science, which I lacked at the time. I didn't know 9 volts versus 450 from a hole in the ground. But for your listeners who are bad at math and science like me, 450 volts is an electric chair dose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, you're talking about electric shock that unfortunately is still legal in the United States,
which causes brain damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're still using that as an electrical lobotomy procedure. Frighteningly enough, in many psychiatric institutions, it's actually undergoing a comeback, not just in America but in Australia. When I was down there about 10 years ago, so anyway, so here we are, and I'm flipping switches for every wrong answer the guy gives me, and unbeknownst to me, I'm the actual person being studied. And, I'm hearing pre-recorded sounds of pain. gain coming from the other end as the doses get higher of electricity. Nobody's actually being injured in the study, but I don't know that.
Wow.
And as the doses get higher, it goes from, to, ow, that really hurt, to, oh my gosh, you're going to kill me. I had a triple bypass last year. If you keep this up, I can already feel my heart skip and beat. You're going to kill me, abject screaming, tortured screaming.
Wow.
And as you could probably surmise, this would cause no small amount of cognitive disturbance and upset on the part of the person actually being studied, who would usually turn to the man in control of the experiment, a doctor in a white lab coat with the name Dr. So-and-so on his jacket. And I would say something like, hey, yeah, I'm not real cool continuing to flip switches here because my buddy in the other room is, he's sounding like he's in pain. He sounds like he's going to die in there. And for his part, the experimenter had been charged with just saying 3 simple words in response to any questioning by the subject, which was, you must continue. No heavy-handed gun at the temple, no locking of the door. You can't leave until you finish. Just words. You got to continue. And the question Stanley Milgram was posing is, what % of Americans would continue to the point of executing their neighbor, or so they thought, based on a wrong answer on a memory quiz, just because a person in position of power said they had to.
Wow.
When he shopped, and I remember, to this day, I can remember sitting in my poli-sci class at Cal State LA, where they had this program for kids who were 14 years old to go to college with the rest of the regular population, and I was just sitting there with my mouth on the floor, going, "Wow, I wonder what % that was." And if you're wondering, it was 2 out of 3 Americans.
Oh my goodness, that's a very large percentage.
That is scary.
And that was 5 decades ago or more. My guess is right now the obedience would be absolutely through the roof comparatively. And they did the study over and over in different cultures. Some were less obedient, northern, Nordic, Norway, Sweden, the guys who are out there in the ice doing their own thing, building their log cabins, not relying on government or third party orders. Some were a lot more obedient, Hispanic cultures, Latin cultures, and Asian cultures, because it's part of their culture. But it would only vary by about 2 points, not much.
Wow, so it was an international study? Hold on, I'm so sorry.
They did it after they did it in America. They were like, wow, maybe that was just a one-off random bad result. Like, let's try it with other cultures. And it was 2 out of 3 people on the planet in the 60s would execute their neighbor, which really opened the door to understanding how something like the Holocaust could happen. And I learned about this study in a poli-sci class, but the place where I could get more types of these studies, Stanford Prison Riot, Normality Bias Studies, Kitty Genovese, the woman who was murdered in cold blood at 3 a.m. Walking back from her bartending job in the 1960s in full view, full sound of 37 people who watched her and heard her being murdered and never called for help. And that was coined the bystander effect. You're basically much more likely to get somebody to help you if you see one other person, because the onus of responsibility is entirely on them and not diffused among a group where everybody's going, well, nobody else is helping. Why not? I'll just let him do it. If it were really that bad, he'd be doing something. And so I was fascinated, and I thought, I'm going to switch up my music major to sociology. And then I realized that sociologists made a poverty wage. And shockingly, everybody told me I was good at arguing, from my mother to my, 8th grade history teacher to everybody in between. And they all said I should go to law school. And since dolphin trainers weren't being hired at SeaWorld, I went off to law school. And I worked for many years as counsel to Fortune 500 companies, who many of whom were polluting the planet and killing our planet. And I don't feel good about that. But about 10 years ago, I got offered the job as human rights attorney for a nonprofit. And I've been doing human rights work ever since. And I feel great about it.
So. And thank goodness for that.
Yes, exactly. Can we get a big applause? Yes.
I mean, I'm sure the Dolphins would have really loved you, Lee, but we're very happy that you made the choice that you made.
Yes. Yeah. Fighting for our basic human rights is like an vital role that you have.
And interesting when you talk about that study, because when you really look at different professions that are placed in the idea of authority, you look at doctors, You look at people in the mental health care system. Now you even look at news anchors or people that are actually spreading information on the media. And we've all grown up believing that that is true information and we should follow this because this is what we're supposed to believe and they're telling us the truth. So when you really look at a study like that and you kind of narrow that down to, oh my goodness, look how many just general public take opinions or take because you should do this and they don't query it. And it's rampant throughout the field of medicine, obviously, Miriam, as you know, throughout the field of mental health, now throughout the entire world versus because of the media and, you know, just saying you do this or this is what's right. And as Dr. Malone said, what is the term he always uses? Mass psychosis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we actually both had a chance to hear him speak. Miriam held a private event at her home at one point where
Lee was almost going to come.
Oh, Lee, that would have been so great. It was a magical night. And I will say that just to hear all of those doctors speak in a way, not speaking medically, actually speaking spiritually about the fact that this is so much above and beyond all of us and bigger than anything the world has ever seen happen ever, because it affected the world at the same time and affected everybody because of this mentally. They got us mentally.
Yes. Well, it's you're absolutely right, guys. It's a planetary wide attack. And, you know, I've been calling it a second Holocaust since March of 2020, much to the dismay of the liberals here in California. And it's ironic, you know, everybody's like, how dare you talk about the Holocaust? I'm like, how dare you freaking not, or we're going to find ourselves in another one. And
I wish that we had that commercial.
I know, right? Well, hold tight. We may get one like that soon. But but you know, the only sin in referencing the Holocaust in my book is truly not mentioning it and ending up in the bowels of the whale again there. And it's going to be worse this time. It already is worse because we've got the marriage, sort of an unholy alliance between technocracy, all of the governments of the world that are being bribed and blackmailed and everything in between. And you've got big tech and big pharma and the governments and corporate, you know, fascist sort of corporate world, all pushing the same agenda. And at least, and I don't mean this by way of minimizing the Holocaust, as somebody who's Romani and whose ancestors also experienced the Holocaust. We weren't Jewish, but we were Romani. And Hitler took us into his crosshairs, just like the Jews, along with the Seventh-day Adventists and, you know, disabled people and anybody else he didn't like. At least the first Holocaust was confined geographically and by region. And you had, you know, Churchill and you had FDR, who, granted, they waited until they were sort of bombed, you know, by way of Pearl Harbor in England into being forced off their arse and into the fight. But at least you had them riding to the rescue at the end of this in the 1940s and ushering in the Nuremberg trials, which gave us the Nuremberg Code, which gave us, you know, the UN and all of the covenants you were quoting at the beginning about basic human rights and freedoms that we all possess as people on this planet. You're not going to have Sweden and frickin' Ecuador and South Dakota and Florida riding to the rescue of the entire world. Like
Florida, maybe. No.
I mean, Florida could help lead the charge, but it's just you're not at critical mass with those four jurisdictions, even with Texas thrown in. What we really need to see is massive non-compliance. And it's fascinating to me as I look around, having really been at the forefront of this, not because I think I'm all that in a bag of chips, but just because I saw it coming. And
yeah, but you are all that and a bag of chips.
You kind of are all that and 2 bags of chips, Leah.
Y'all are making me hungry right now. I'm tired. But anyway, thank you. But you know, I just saw it coming, and I think I saw it coming because I was raised, you know, on my mom's side by Eastern Europeans who fled, you know, communism, and the ones who didn't get out got to face down Hitler on the one side, and then my dad's dad was standing on the deck of the USS West Virginia in Pearl Harbor when it was bombed out from under him. So I came from this long line of people who were like, yeah, freedom ain't free. And I don't care that you're a little girl. You better be prepared to lay down your life. And this is what it looks like when they start whittling away your freedom, and don't let the frog be slow boiled on you. In addition to the fact that I was raised in a very chaotic household where, you know, people who were supposed to protect me were not actually doing that. And so I rapidly learned that you don't take things at face value, and you're not going to take on an adult at the age of 7 and win based on your brawn. You're going to do it based on your brains, if at all. And when I look around today, and I'd be curious what you guys think, those are the people at the forefront of this fight: abused kids, abused wives, or somebody else who's gone through some sort of abusive situation where they learned intrinsically, I get to rely on myself. I'm going to not necessarily listen to what is being said. I'm going to look at what is actually happening and take my cues based on that. And immigrants, I talk to Cubans, I talk to Venezuelans, I talk to Eastern Europeans, I talk to, North Koreans and Vietnamese, and all of these people have fled communism, and they're like standing out at truck stops when I'm organizing a convoy going through New Mexico going, yeah, I jumped on the convoy in San Diego, and I'm like, you're 78-year-old Vietnamese people. And the little lady who comes up to hear on me goes, darn right, my husband escaped 17 times before he was successful on the 18th time getting out of communist Vietnam. And they electroshocked my mother on her private parts until she nearly died. So we don't take our freedom for free, and we're going to ride all the way to DC. And I'm like, well, hello, these
like
these
people
are the
really fighting for their survival. They're like really fighting for their survival, and I read a great philosopher one time who defines defines freedom as never giving up the right to fight. Basically always fighting back. And so that is the way that I define it. Right.
Yeah. And they've seen the people that you're mentioning from other countries. They've actually seen what can happen. Unfortunately, in our beautiful country of America, which I love and uphold, we got complacent. A lot of us, not everyone, but a lot of us. And like you said, these other people have seen this. And, the Holocaust has been mentioned many times in the last 2 years because it didn't happen overnight. It happened a little bit and a little infringement and a little infringement and one more freedom taken away and one more until the sheeple.
Right. And you just like,
it's my professional word.
Yeah. You just always have to fight back. And I mean, it's unfortunately really sad that people are literally fleeing from that sort of tyranny all around the world, but it's real and it's happening. And it's absolutely so freaking awesome that you are fighting for their rights, Lee. Yeah. And I mean, I know we can spend more time talking about those different interviews and all of that, but before we talk about that a little bit more, I wanted you to please talk about your time in Thailand and all of the human rights advocacy that you did to end child slavery over there, or at least do your part in everything that you did.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Miriam. Because it's really nearest and dearest to my heart, and it's a testament on how dangerous the world is that I stopped going into child brothels in Thailand and on the Malaysia border that get blown up 330 times a year because I assessed there was a greater threat in America, of all places. So that, if your viewers are confused as to how seriously Dundas thinks the current threat from the COVID policies are and the pandemic narrative, that should give them a reference point. But,
a little bit of a comparison.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, I was a normal soccer mom with an 8-year-old, and my husband had sold his business in 2013, and we had that thing that business owners rarely have, which is time and money all in the same zone. Usually you either have time but no money, or money but no time, because you're working hard to make the other. And we were like, you know what, let's go down to Australia. We're going to visit some friends down there. And I got bored. I got into Sydney, and within 2 days I was bored off my arse because I had never not worked, like, ever. And I started cold calling anti-sex trafficking nonprofits in Australasia, who would pick up the phone in, somewhere in Australia and be like, let me get this straight. You want to fight the child brothel industry in Vietnam, and you're a white soccer mom from Orange County? Click.
Oh my goodness. Because that's what everybody does when they're bored.
Yeah, that's what every vacationing tourist in Sydney does when their kids at school and they're bored and their friends are busy that day. So that went like a lead balloon. And I got a call back when we'd left Australia a couple months later, because like you guys, I'm very persistent. And it was from a 714 phone number, which is the area code for Orange County. And we had disconnected our American cell phone. So I was very like, who's calling me that's not my mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a woman who had gotten the message on their landline. They'd adopted 2 Vietnamese orphans. They wanted to adopt more. They couldn't. They opened an orphanage in Vietnam. They owned restaurants in Orange County, and they were working with their church group out of Mariners, which is a big Christian church in OC, on sex trafficking victims that were showing up in their orphanage, and how to fight this with the sex trafficking nonprofit. And they just happened to be all converging in Da Nang, Vietnam on May 23rd of that year in 2013, I think. And they were like, you want to come to Da Nang? And I remember I'm like, hey, baby, we're all in the car in New Zealand looking at woolly sheep going by, right? And I'm like, can we go to Da Nang a little bit early, truncate our New Zealand trip? And he's like, what's in Da Nang? I mean, sure, but like, what's in Da Nang? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm having a Kevin Costner moment where I feel like if I build it, they will come. And he's like, whatever, babe. Like, sure, we'll go to Da Nang. So I fly into Da Nang. We get some tours of the orphanages, of the brothels. I get to meet the people doing the work. And I fell in love with it. And I just said, hey, who's writing a follow-up letter to the Vietnamese prime minister on these issues? And they were like, do you like to write? I'm like, I'm a lawyer. Do fish like to swim? That's all we do. Like, we do this and we do that, So I wrote a letter. And by the time I got home volunteering for the next 3 or 4 months in Cambodia and Thailand for this nonprofit, I had a job as their in-house lawyer. And I thought I was going to be doing, this type of stuff. But instead, I was actually tasked with opening their Southeast Asia office in Thailand, in Bangkok, and hiring undercover crews of former Navy SEAL type, SWAT type guys to go into the brothels.
Oh my God, I know. It's like, can we please get an applause for Lee? Oh my gosh.
She's a bad mama jama.
Yeah.
That's what I can say on the air.
Yeah.
The bad mama jama.
The fact that we're even talking about that there are sex slavery victims that are under the age of 18. We're talking about under the age of 5 sometimes, Jara. I mean, these are horrific stories that she was out there slaying dragons and putting criminals away.
Yeah, there's no lower age. You have babies being trafficked for pedophiles in some of these countries because Dennis in Chicago will say, oh, I believe the rumor that if I have sex with a virgin, it'll cure me of AIDS that I got from already indulging my various perverse predilections. Mm-hmm. And they will literally spend a year planning their trip to Phnom Penh, Cambodia, or the back end of Thailand so that they can buy a virgin. Well, even 5-year-olds aren't virgins in brothels in these areas. So you end up with a high demand for literally babies. And you've got a huge problem because China sits right atop, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand. It's the country to the north. And you've got the one child policy up there that has been it's a perfect storm because you have these Chinese parents who give birth to a baby girl and the dad wants a son because in that culture, that's what you want. And so rather than killing the child, they will just sell them to black market traders on the border into the Cambodian and Thai brothels to be sex trafficked. So we are literally pulling kids out of brothels after years in the brothels who are kindergarten age, who are second grade age after they've already been in the life. But I got to tell you, as sad as this work is, 40 million people currently enslaved. That's every single person in California by the numbers, if you were to give it a reference point. And $150 billion with a B, $1 billion a year industry. You pull
Wait, hold on for 1 second, Lee. 40 million people that are enslaved. 40 million people that are enslaved. Like that is actually the reality of our planet right now.
Yeah.
40 million people.
90% of those are female and 89% of those that involve sexual servitude, sexual favors for money. So what you're basically saying is it's like envisioning every person in California, because that's our population right now, 40 million people in Cali, waking up, chained to a bed overnight, being raped for profit 5, 10, 15 times a night as a young girl. That's the majority of what your human trafficking population looks like. And then, of course, you also have t-shirt factories and mines in Africa where they're needing to mine lithium for our cell phone, or whatever. And you've got the non-sexual slavery as well. But it's a horrific scene. But these kids, I got to tell you, I have been waiting for the day that is right now. I am getting my daughter into a dorm as we speak. That's why I'm in a hotel. And I want to cry because it's super sad and she's my only child. But I have been waiting for this day for 10 years because if I had my druthers and I didn't have to be home every day doing the soccer mom routine, I would be in an Asian brothel because the women and the young girls we pull out of there, when you say to them, hey, what would you be doing if you weren't in a brothel right now? They say things like, oh, I would go back to the town one over from mine because I'm used chattel in my town because once you're sold, even though your parents are the ones selling you into sex slavery, you're considered, used goods. So you can't go back to your family. But I would go back to my neighboring town where my cousin lives and I would open a jewelry, cart where I sold jewelry to the tourists and they have mocked up in high def, full color, glossy detail what their life would be like if they weren't in a brothel. And the amount of life force you have to have within your body to be being raped 10 or 12 times a night for years, to not fall prey to AIDS, death by angry John, death by angry pimp who's trafficking you, to still be alive through all that, to not have succumbed and to still be able to not only envision a reality outside the one that you're existing in, but be able to color in the blanks with rainbow colors. These girls have more persistence, more love, more life energy than, and I don't mean to diss the soccer moms I work with in Orange County, but put me in a room full of these girls any day of the week and twice on Sunday over the housewives of Orange County, because they have so much more going on in terms of their desire to live and to free the people who are entrapped like they have been enslaved over time.
Wow, that makes me absolutely so appreciative, and is just such a nod to my personal beliefs, which is the actual strength and power of the human soul.
Right. I know. The human spirit.
The human spirit, like relentless, absolutely able to regenerate itself, to still create, like you said, to still have an imagination. That's actually a horrific story, but has such beauty in it as well, Lee. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes, thank you so much. And that's actually, yeah, were you going to do the clapping again? And Lee, and that's on, I mean, like you're just like a mic dropper. You just drop the mic. I mean, you're such a freedom fighter. It's so impressive, all the work that you've been doing. You know, that's why, well, you know this about me, Lee, and I don't know if anyone's out there listening that remembers this about me, but that's how you and I first started working together, is that we went out to Miracles Outreach together, and you're so sweet. You just sat down and started organizing with me.
And I love that. I love doing that kind of stuff. It just put me to work. I'm happy when my hands are busy.
Yeah. And if I may say, Miriam, so that, because we always have new listeners coming on, and Miracles Outreach is the foster care program that you work with here in Florida, which actually saves
girls that have been trafficked and that have been abused, right? And so in America, what ends up happening is a little different than in Thailand, but what ends up happening is that a girl is rescued from being trafficked. Either she's been raped all day long, she's been forced to use drugs, she's been starved, she's been beaten, whatever the case may be, she is rescued by the police, and then she's put into foster care. And so what ends up happening once a child is put in foster care is that the child is evaluated for possible mental disorders. And so about 50% of the time, a child is then put on psychiatric medication, which has harmful effects. And so that's what me and Lee teamed up on to start working on in America, because unfortunately, a child experiences horrific abuse from a pimp or from a trafficker, and then on top of it is put on a psychiatric medication, which then pushes them down further. And so then their life force is stopped, you know?
Without other probably also valid forms of therapy, like a nice quiet space, talking about things. Like you said, Miriam, we've talked many times about getting the body in good order with nutrients and vitamins after having such horrific incidents going on in life, that there are many ways that one must actually heal the body and the mind and the spirit without just covering up what's happened with drugs that can also have side effects. I have them here in my hand, actually from CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights. And these drugs, actually, this is reports to FDA's MedWatch system on violent adverse effects linked to psychiatric drugs, which is homicidal ideation, ideas of homicide, hostility, physical assault, homicide, psychosis, violent related symptoms, aggression, suicide, mania. So these are obviously things that have been well documented. And as you know, Lee and Miriam, the whole serotonin chemical imbalance just got debunked finally a couple weeks ago, but yet they've continued putting children and adults on these very bad drugs. So well done to you both for what you're doing, especially in the foster care and the sex trafficking industry with regards to that as well, Miriam.
Yeah, well, we just want kids to be kids, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just have kids be kids.
Now, if I may, we're actually
be trafficked, right? Not be trafficked, not be drugged. Yeah, but before we go on, I really want Lee to talk about what she's going to do when she's visiting Florida before we end off. Do we have time for that?
Yeah, well, we basically have about 5 more minutes, Lee. So I want to hear about that. And also, we like to take a moment in our show. Sometimes we go over very, rough subject matters, but we always like to talk about the hope, what people can do, how they can move into action, how you can inspire people on what can we do to be causative in these situations. So let's share a little bit about that.
Yes, definitely. Yes, tell us about your event if you want.
So the event is this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's a chiropractic convention in Clearwater Beach at a hotel that I am blanking on the name of. But if your listeners want more information, they can totally reach out to me. I'll give my email at the end. And it's going to be just an amazing time with a bunch of holistically minded, healthcare providers in our country who are learning about, as we were just talking about, natural ways of healing the body, getting the body, mind, and spirit all holistically working together. And they asked me to do a keynote. It's a little bit, I don't want to say it's outside my normal lane, but it's outside the normal lane I've been in for the last 2 years. My husband is a chiropractor, so I'm very familiar with these conventions, but I usually keynote at Freedom events. But there's so much convergence. I mean, we all think we're separate groups, and really what we're finding out is anybody who gives a damn about freedom is part of the same group, and really that should be everybody on the planet. So they're having me close it out on Saturday night with an hour and 15-minute presentation on what's up on the freedom side of things. And I'm seeing a lot of progress on the freedom front. We defeated a lot of our bad bills out here. We're defeating bad bills across the country. We've got all sorts of people running for political office who are taking things back at the local and state level, which is what needs to happen. We've got the courts finally getting in the game. Everybody's like, yay, the judges are finally ruling in our favor. I'm like, yeah, after y'all kicked up your heels on the street using your First Amendment right to speak and gather, never forget the courts of law they follow the court of public opinion, if you will. But that's all going on. And I'm headed to Clay Clark's event the following weekend, which is like September, 11th, I want to say. I'll be speaking there on Friday afternoon. Let me just double check the date on that. Yeah, it's Friday. No, my bad. It's Friday, September 16th. And I'll be up in Post Falls, Idaho. And I'm not sure where I'm at after that. It's always such a blur, but I'll be around near a microphone in all likelihood. I did want to leave your listeners with a couple of hopeful things. One of the things we're doing in the sex trafficking arena is we are finding out who the bad guys are. And when they make profit from trafficking, which they do make a hell of a lot of profit from trafficking, way more than they do from drugs, because if the buyer wants to buy more drugs tomorrow night and I'm the dealer, I have to go buy more drugs to sell more drugs, which cuts into my gross money. But if I'm just renting the same girl, I have no overhead. I don't need to buy another girl to sell another girl to a pedophile. I just rent her until she dies. And the only hard cost I have is really feeding her. And if you're housing her in some place that's, a tent or a shack in Thailand, that's it. Like it's a cup of rice a day or a Happy Meal a day out here. So in America, so everybody is moving into trafficking children because the profit margin is like 90 to 100% versus anything else they could be illegally selling. But no matter what they're illegally selling, when they take the money from that and put it in the bank, it becomes money laundering, which is a crime. But it's also a crime for the bank to accept the money if they know that laundering and illegal activities are the source of the money. And if they don't freeze the account, the Department of Justice can come at them with a multi-billion, with a B, dollar fine, as they did HSBC in 2012 for knowingly allowing Mexican drug cartels to money launder through their American banks. So we are creating a list of the bad guys that we're sourcing from all nonprofits in the world. 90% of the bad guy names that we turn over are not already known to be bad guys, which is to say we're getting a lot of new bad guys into the system. We generate intelligence profiles using the main purveyor of that, which is Thomson Reuters, WorldCheck. And they send that intel profile out to all the banks in the world. And now the bank has a duty to go, oh, Joe Blow, it says here the money he's depositing in the Bangkok branch is coming from the rape of children. Whoops. We should freeze his account. And if they don't, even though they're outside the country, if they're trafficking in U.S. money, which everybody is, who's a bad guy, the Department of Justice has jurisdiction to knock them down with a fine.
So this is amazing. Oh, this is so great.
Yeah, very powerful macro level program that we're executing there. And then the last thing I wanted to mention on the point of hope is you can always do something. It's Margaret Mead on steroids. Never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world because they're the only ones who ever have. Right. And there was a study they did with rats where this experimenter dumped a bunch of his lab rats into a vat of water to see how long it would take him to drown. About 15 minutes on average. He wasn't that impressed. He's like, wow, I guess it's because they're fat and lazy lab rats who are getting fed 3 square meals a day from my employee. Let me try the wild rats. So he's like, hey, and he dumps all these wild rats, the descendant of Christopher Columbus escapees who paddled 2 miles to the nearest island. And he's like, surely the wild rats are going to outperform the lab rats. So he dumps them in and they actually sink faster than the lab rats. So now Carl Richter was the scientist's name. He's like, what? Like, why are the lab rats who are fat and like no muscle swimming longer before they die than the wild rats? And he thinks to himself, maybe it's because they are being fed by people in the lab and they have hope of rescue, and the hope is giving them the will to swim a little longer. So he decides to test the hypothesis. He throws the lab rats back into the vat of water. Again, they start to drown at minute 15, and right before they sink, he plucks the little rat out, towels off its little furry head, and goes, "Oh, you're such a good rat, you got this," and he throws them back into the water again, reinforcing the fact that there is indeed hope because they just were rescued once. So now it's clear in their brain there is hope, right? And the question he was seeking to answer is, are the lab rats, having just had the reinforcement of hope, right, occur, are they going to swim less long the second time, which would be understandable because they just ran a freaking rat marathon and almost died. Like, they're already at full-on muscle failure.
We got 40 seconds, Lee. 40 seconds.
Or longer.
Go.
They swam longer. They swam 3 days.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
hope is the
amazing.
answer.
Yes, hope.
Thank
Hope is
you,
the answer.
Lee.
Wait, before we go, can you please tell the listeners and the viewers how to get in touch with you?
I am at freedomfighternation.org. Again, that's freedomfighternation.org. Or you can find me by texting the word freedom to 53445, or my email, leigh.esq@gmail.com. Thanks for having me, guys.
Woo! Thank you, Lee. You're amazing.
You're amazing.
Thank you so much, Lee.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Voices for change, everybody.
Yes, that's right.
Reason my people was fighting for it was the knocking from put on your uniform. This is the coldest war, another culture war. This is a sequel. Listening, all of my people. All we have left is a